Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
The Bills fired the wrong guy. How did the Dodgers do it? And was it the greatest coaching job we've ever seen? It's all straight ahead on a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports, off and running, episode number 70 of the podcast. Lots to get into today. The divisional round of the playoffs are now in the books in the NFL, and we got another coaching vacancy, which we'll hit on. The Dodgers doing what they're doing. The Dodgers are able to do something that not even the commissioner of the sport, Rob Manfred, has been capable of doing. And we'll get into the national title game in college football. But before we get to any of that, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're taking the podcast in on. Like the episode, rate the episode, leave a review if you can. But most importantly, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, and it's completely free. All right, let's get into the college football national title game last night, because that was a title game for the ages. And Indiana beating Miami to win the national title in college football. And, sometimes as a sports fan, watching sports movies, fictional movies, it kind of ruins it, because you can see all the flaws as being a diehard sports fan, right? That would never happen. That's unrealistic. But when they make the movie about what Indiana has just accomplished, it will seem completely unrealistic, except for the fact we just saw it happen. Nobody in this sport has been able to pull off the turnaround like Kirk Cignetti and Indiana. This was a program that was literally the worst program in the Power Five for generations, right? I mean, they were a punchline for generations. You take a look at the years, just the couple of years before Cignetti got there. They won 2 games total in 2021. That was not that long ago. In the previous 3 years combined, they won 9 total games. And then Kirk Cignetti shows up. He has that press conference, I win, Google me. And that's exactly what he has done. 11-2 last year, which was quite an accomplishment. And then 16-0 this year, and a national title. It is unbelievable to be the first team since Yale in 1896 to go 16-0. And this was not some big, long turnaround. This was 2 years to deliver the school's first national championship, something that would have seemed impossible just a couple of years ago. And that just simply does not happen. And here's the part that makes it even more incredible. And again, it sounds absurd. It sounds too good to be true. Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback who was not only the Heisman Trophy winner, but is now a national title winner, declined when he tried to walk on at Miami, right? Imagine getting declined as a walk-on and then going and beating that school to win the only national championship in college football your program has ever had. And, it would be one thing with the portal if Indiana just bought the best talent. Miami has top 10 talent. Indiana's roster, I think, was ranked 72. Miami had 45 blue chip players. They'll be all over the NFL draft in April. Indiana has 7. So this was not just like a talent gap. This was a canyon in terms of the difference in talent. So it's not just the best coaching job of the year. It's the most remarkable coaching job we've ever seen in the history of sports. And the play of the game, you talk about, again, seems completely unrealistic. But on a, 4th down in the 4th quarter of the national championship game, up a field goal, Cignetti dials up a quarterback keeper on 4th and 5. And not only does Mendoza get it, he gets the touchdown bouncing off guys. If they made a movie about it, you would roll your eyes. Oh, come on. This is getting a little over the top. Absolutely incredible. But what a job by Miami. to hang tough because, I mean, Indiana was rolling teams and they at least made it a game. But at the end of the day, Indiana and Kirk Cignetti, the most incredible job and a national title people will be talking about for years to come. All right, let's move on to the NFL. And just when we thought we were out on adding more coaches to the unemployment line, the Buffalo Bills have entered the chat. Just when they think I'm out, they pull me back in as they fired Sean McDermott on Monday. A move that when you first heard it was kind of shocking, but look, it's not outrageous. The Bills have been trying to get over the hump here and get back to a Super Bowl for a very long time. And I think the fact that it was shocking but not outrageous, both those things can be true at the same time because this was not one bad playoff loss. This was not a knee-jerk reaction to a bad playoff loss. The Bills have kind of been doing the same thing here, and we keep thinking, hey, this could be their year, and it has not turned out to be their year in any of those years. And at the end of the day, you got to make a change, even if it's just for change's sake. The Bills have now had 6 straight years where they've exited the playoffs in the most painful, but yet somehow kind of familiar fashion, even against different teams, even with the script being slightly different. At some point, being in the hunt is not good enough. They feel like they are built to win a Super Bowl right now, and they better be right that it's a coaching issue and not a talent issue. Now, I should say, this is not guaranteed to work. That's very important. There's a very real chance that the Bills are not as good a team next year. But I would simply say, even without knowing who the next head coach is going to be, what was the alternative? They fired the offensive coordinator a couple of years ago and brought in Joe Brady. You have to make a change, even if it's just for change's sake. And the thing that the Bills might not want to realize, their Super Bowl window is closing. Josh Allen is not getting any younger, and he is getting more expensive. So that is going to make patching the holes on the roster more difficult. So the Bills, I think they fired the wrong guy. To get rid of Sean McDermott, I can understand that. You need a change. But then to promote Brandon Beane to be president of football operations, to basically have full say, that one does not make sense to me at all. And it's another example of the owners listening rather than watching. But to stick with McDermott for a second, when you heard the story of him calling up from the team plane a Buffalo reporter to relitigate the interception/catch play in overtime, that's an example of a guy who knew he was in trouble. That's a guy who's going down swinging, and I think it's kind of as a panic move at that point to have time after the game to think about it, to have a whole post-game thing. That's the definition, basically, of desperation in my eyes. And what's lost on that play, whether it's an interception or a catch, the ball was at, the 30-yard line? Now, the player, the intercepting guy, I don't remember his name, but he should have been penalized for taking off his helmet. But still, that play did not decide the game. He didn't run it back for a touchdown or put them in field goal range. The Buffalo defense let them down again. So I think that's what's lost on that play. That play did not decide the game. The plays after that interception decided the game. So to hit on Brandon Beane and how he gets promoted in this whole fiasco, Sean McDermott is gone. Okay, fine. You change coaches and we'll find out who is going to be the next head coach. But when you're promoting the GM, you are saying that this is exclusively at the feet of the coach, right? To give the GM now even more authority, you have to look at the roster and say, oh no, this roster is fine the way it is. This roster is good enough to win a Super Bowl. Not just get to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. And again, the owners, they're sitting with these GMs. They guys have a contact. If I'm a head coach, I want to make sure I got a lifeline to the owner to be able to make my case more times than not, because GMs, it's a very political position, and you're seeing that play out in real time. Because when you take a look at this roster, this is not an elite Super Bowl roster. Josh Allen's elite. I don't think any serious person would say that he's the problem, even though he was problematic on Sunday. But you look at the roster that he is being asked to drag basically uphill. This was, I think, the worst version of that roster, which shows you over time, when guys start to get more expensive, it becomes harder. And with Josh Allen's contract next year, going from 36 to 56, it's going to be even harder to build out a roster. And you look at the pass catchers. They might have, Brandon Beane in the past in the summertime went on a whole rant about how the receivers, everybody complaining about the receivers. Look at who Josh Allen was throwing to. Keon Coleman, Brandon Cooks, Shakir, who's a nice player. That's not a great supporting cast. The reason why we said the Bills have to get to the Super Bowl this year was because, A, they've been trying to get there for a while, and the fact that the Chiefs weren't there, the Ravens weren't there. It seemed like the path was easier. But this is not going to get easier from this point. Again, Josh Allen's cap number goes from 36 to 56. So it's going to be very important that the next coach does a phenomenal job of actually coaching. Now, it's not been long enough to really get an idea of who might get that job. Some names that are being mentioned. It seems like they're going back to the old well in terms of maybe Brian Daboll being that guy. Maybe Joe Brady gets promoted from offensive coordinator. And I would say, I wonder if John Harbaugh had a do-over, whether or not he would have waited an extra week. But the Joe Brady and the Brian Daboll, to me, that's just more of the same. That's just continuity for continuity's sake. I think that they do need something extra. I think that they have to look outside of the organization. If you're saying the problem has been inside the organization, what sense does it make to get rid of the head coach and just promote from within? Brian Flores, to me, is a very interesting name. I don't think he's a great fit. I think I've said this before, for every job. In Miami, his offensive coordinators were terrible. He had 3 different coordinators in 3 different years. It seemed like he didn't even care about the offense. Brian Flores should be a strong, serious candidate for the Buffalo Bills if they can keep Joe Brady. If Joe Brady remains as offensive coordinator, you bring in Brian Flores to be the head coach and let him do what he does best. Build a culture, set the defensive identity, and establish some real hardcore accountability for the roster. Now, I don't know if Brady will accept that because he probably thinks he deserves a promotion, but allow him to keep working with Josh Allen, and that would be a clear division of labor. Brian Flores, not right for every single job, but I definitely think he would be right for the Buffalo Bills. We'll see if they end up going in that direction, but it's going to be fascinating to watch because, again, walking in there, whoever the next guy is, that's a very high bar to clear. You got to get to a Super Bowl right away. You said the organization is saying the coach was the problem, and that's high expectations to walk into right away. So look, the fact that the Bills, they've made a change. The risk, though, is obvious. If the coach they just fired immediately becomes one of the most sought-after coaches around the NFL, generally, that's not a great sign. Generally, that turns out to blow up in your face. And of course, with Buffalo, with Mike Vrabel, with New England, with Mike Vrabel, I think that was what happened there as well. As soon as he got fired by Tennessee, seemed like it was a mistake by Tennessee, and it's kind of proven to be that way. So with Josh Allen playing like this, you walk into a situation where it's not going to collapse. But look at how quickly things change. At this point last year, we were talking about the Chiefs going for a three-peat. They're unbeatable. And then this year, they don't make the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes is hurt, and now their future is a little bit up in the air. The Bills made a change. Whether they made a change for the better, that remains to be seen.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, I want to move on to the Dodgers now and their latest big move and how it's forced everybody to lose their minds, basically, and why I think baseball secretly, maybe not publicly, but secretly is over the moon about it because it accomplishes something that Rob Manfred has never been able to do in his years as commissioner. So the deal, of course, is Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million. Still kind of sounds a little weird. Rolling off those numbers. So basically, he, with deferrals baked in, he's going to make $57 million in 2026. And the immediate reaction to that deal when it was announced, this is going to cause a lockout. There's going to be a lockout in 2027 because of Kyle Tucker. This is unfair. The Dodgers are ruining baseball, and there's going to be a work stoppage as a result. And look, I get it. The numbers are jarring, as I said, right? 4 years, $240 million. And when you factor in the luxury tax part of this, the Dodgers are essentially going to be paying Kyle Tucker $120 million in 2026. $120 million is more than, I think it's 10 or 11 teams in Major League Baseball's entire payroll. And it sounds insane. It looks insane. It's kind of insane. I get it. But here's the first thing that we need to establish on this. Kyle Tucker and his contract is not the reason why baseball is headed to a work stoppage. That was going to happen regardless. The lockout is coming. We've always known this. December 1st, that's when the CBA expires, and that was going to be the case whether Kyle Tucker signed for $240, $140, $40, a single dollar. If he retired, there was always going to be a work stoppage. And I think baseball is ecstatic about the Tucker contract because when that deal came down, I have never heard so many fans be in favor of a salary cap before. Usually that conversation is about 50-50. Not this time. People, what's even the point of having a season? The Dodgers are going to win again. The Dodgers are ruining baseball. That's what you'll hear. The Dodgers are ruining baseball by all this spending. Here's the deal. It's not the Dodgers' job to fix baseball. The Dodgers' job is to put the best team on the field that they can within the rules, and that's exactly what they're doing. And the fans who are complaining about the Dodgers ruining baseball are so hypocritical because if their team, Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, if any of these teams were doing the exact same thing, fans would be over the moon about it. They'd be there would be no issue whatsoever. They'd love it. Their team's winning World Series and then going out and adding more talent. Fantastic. Now, I get it. Not every team can run like the Dodgers. They have some built-in advantages. So I did want to get into on the podcast what some of those advantages are and why the Dodgers are able to spend like the Dodgers are. But I think the biggest mistake people make is thinking that this is just about the Dodgers being rich. They are rich, absolutely. But why they can do this and why this is a baseball problem, not a player problem, and why a salary cap would not do anything to fix the inequity in payroll and money that the Dodgers have. So the Dodgers, they can do this because they are uniquely positioned in modern baseball. The Dodgers don't just have more money than everyone else. They kind of have better money than everyone else. So the most important part of this entire puzzle is local television revenue. The Dodgers have the most lucrative TV contract in Major League Baseball. It's not one of, it is one of one. And it makes them not just rich, but the cash flow of it is stable money. And that matters a whole lot more. And I'll explain why coming into this. So the Dodgers in 2013, they signed a new TV deal for 25 years, $8.53 billion. It's more than $8 billion. And it created their own network, Sportsnet LA, and it's roughly worth $330 million a year for 25 years. And the real kicker of this was because of the previous owner, Frank McCourt, his bankruptcy settlement structure, the way it came about, most of that money, that TV money for the Dodgers, does not get swept into the revenue sharing pool. So while other teams are handing over big checks to baseball as part of that, the Dodgers get to keep most of that money. So that's a massive advantage. And baseball, MLB, has raised concerns about it. They don't like it. In fact, they hate it. But that money is guaranteed, it's locked in, and it gives the Dodgers a financial advantage and runway that no other team has. But again, that's not a player problem, that's an owner problem. So when people say, why don't other teams just spend like the Dodgers? The answer is they can't really. Even though other teams are rich as well, they don't have that financial engine that the Dodgers do that is plotted out year in and year out. Because for most baseball teams, not everyone, but most, TV money is the driver of their financial engine. But not only are the Dodgers making more money than everybody else, over the last decade, that engine for TV deals has exploded for a lot of teams. Regional sports networks have collapsed. Right fees have been slashed. Payments have been delayed and are missing, if not outright eliminated. So teams have gone from being able to project stable cash flow, not knowing now if the checks are even coming. So you can't, like the Dodgers and their deferred contracts, you could do that if you know for the next 25 years, you're going to be making money. You can't do that if your regional sports network is falling apart. You can't do, play big in free agency. You can't offer deferred contracts like that if you don't know what your finances are going to look 5 years from now. The Dodgers clearly do. Their TV deal is locked in, it's predictable, and critically, they don't have to share as much of it with the rest of baseball as other revenue streams. So when people say, why don't other teams just do what the Dodgers do? They can't. And that's why. So you can't spend like the Dodgers if your biggest revenue source is kind of unstable. Again, this should not be a player problem. This is an owner problem, and it's up to the owners to be able to fix that, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the players. So let's move on to the next part of this, because the Shohei Ohtani contract has been a massive game changer as well. And that's another part of this that people, I don't think, realize. When Ohtani signed with the Dodgers, he basically rewired their financial structure. So he has a 10-year, $70 million a year for 10 years, so $700 million, but 68 of that $70 million is deferred. And he could do that because of the TV deal, right? He knows the Dodgers are still going to be printing money years in advance. Most teams can't offer deferrals like that, not because they don't want to, but because they can't guarantee what the future revenue is going to look like. The Dodgers obviously can. Also, when they get a player like Ohtani, there's the Japanese factor, right? The Dodgers sign Ohtani and Yamamoto and Sasaki. They don't get just those players. They get an entire country's corporate interest. Japanese companies are lining up to sponsor the Dodgers, advertising deals and international partnerships and global brand like all that type of stuff. And that money also does not meaningfully, in fact, impact the luxury tax. So while some of it does get touched by revenue sharing, apparently, the Dodgers still retain a vast majority of it. The Dodgers are printing money. So good luck doing that in Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or Tampa Bay or Milwaukee or any of those small markets. Those markets simply do not offer the same advantages as LA does, especially to Japanese players who want to be as close to their home country as possible, and to sponsors as well. So it's not favoritism, it's just the advantages that LA has, and only LA has that. Of course, now, in fairness to the Dodgers, LA does have two teams, right? The Angels do exist, and they have been as poorly run as any team in baseball, really as any team in professional sports. So the deferrals, people love calling them a loophole. They're not. Deferrals are a luxury only available to teams with future guaranteed revenue. If you're the Pirates and you defer money to 10 years from now and your TV deal collapses, guess what? You're going to probably have to sell the team as a result. That's a major difference. So deferrals also allow the Dodgers, and I think this is really what impacts the Tucker deal, to kind of compress the risk, right? Like they will go short but super expensive, and instead of being a deal that hurts them in the long term, it's not going to be nearly as catastrophic, right? When the other teams don't want to sign Kyle Tucker to 10-year deals, the Dodgers say, okay, fine, 4 years, high AAV, high annual salary, but that's a product of their success. The fact they've won 2 World Series makes it easier to do that. So they're able to absorb their mistakes in a way that other teams don't. So that also is a major factor in this, right? Like most teams, they miss out on a contract and it sets them back for a year or two. The Dodgers are able to avoid the catastrophic aspect of that, like Michael Conforto's contract. It wasn't very good. It was making $17 million last year. I'm guessing this offseason you haven't heard about Michael Conforto or Kirby Yates or Tanner Scott. For most teams, those mistakes will impact future spending. For the Dodgers, they're just kind of accounting errors, right? And that's not because they don't care about it. It's because they have a system that they built where future like the failures of the present don't compound in the future. So you might be saying, wait a second, it sounds like you're making the case that the Dodgers are a problem and that they are ruining the sport. Well, look, if the Dodgers are a problem, that is a baseball problem. It's not a problem for the players to fix. And, the Dodgers don't just outspend everyone. They're also super smart. They outsmart them too. It's crazy to think that they have not had a top 10 pick in 20 years in the baseball draft. They've not had a top 5 pick since 1993, but yet their farm system is good every single year. They have got this thing down from top to bottom. It's not just spending high up for the top free agents. They're into scouting. They're into player development. And when other teams make mistakes, yes, they have the ability to pounce, right? Freddie Freeman should still be an Atlanta Brave, but when the Braves kind of hedged, Dodgers jumped. Mookie Betts, another example. Shohei Ohtani was with the Angels for 5-6 years? And they couldn't even reach 500 with him and Mike Trout. So the Dodgers capitalize on situations. Now, a big part of that is the money they have, but the other part of this that I think that nobody wants to really address because it's emotional right now, baseball has more parity than any other sport. Certainly more than the NFL or the NBA. 16 different World Series winners since 2000. 18 different teams have reached the World Series since 2010. Now, I get it. The Dodgers have just won back-to-back the World Series titles. But before that, they lost in the Division Series twice. So with baseball being the game that it is, short series are random. And payroll does not, despite what the Dodgers are spending, guarantee championships. The idea that no one else can win is not factual. And it comes up in sports all the time. The 73 Warriors did not win. The perfect Patriots got taken down by the Giants. The Dodgers' success is not inevitable. And it feels like teams are going to use that as a way to say, we got to get a salary cap. We have to have a salary cap. The Dodgers are ruining the sport. They are building their case publicly. And a deal like Kyle Tucker will make that case easier to make. But just know that if the owners are set on a salary cap, we will not see baseball in 2027. And whether or not we see baseball in 2028 is up for grabs as well. That is the one thing. A cap is not something that the players would accept. And a cap would not make the other teams spend more. It would just make the Dodgers spend less. And everyone's screaming about a salary cap every time the Dodgers go out, or the Yankees in the past used to go out, or the Mets with Steve Cohen go out and sign a crazy contract. Well, that's why baseball needs a salary cap. What baseball really needs, and can do this without the fighting of a cap, is a salary floor. The problem is not just that the Dodgers spend too much, it's that way too many teams. The Dodgers are one of one, but there's way too many teams that spend too little, and they're allowed to do that without any consequences. A salary cap, we know, is a non-starter for the players. If the owners force it, there will not be a season in 2027 until the owners decide, you know what, we don't actually need it. But there's not enough attention on the fact that the owners could institute a salary floor. They already have the tools to do that. They just don't want to use them. So revenue sharing does exist. Luxury tax penalties do exist. Centralized money for teams does exist. Baseball already redistributes massive sums of money every single year. And it's coming from the teams that fans love to yell about. The Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, some other teams. So the issue isn't access to money. The issue is what teams are required to do with that money. Because right now, a lot of franchises, too many franchises, treat revenue sharing like profit sharing. They take the check, stick it in their pocket, keep their payrolls low, lose their 90 games a year, and say, well, we're just rebuilding. A salary floor fixes the effort question without touching the player side of things. So, and look, they could put these rules in place. You want revenue sharing? Great. You have to spend as a team a meaningful percentage of that check on payroll. You want draft advantages? Okay, fine. You have to meet a minimum threshold for what you're spending on payroll. You want competitive balance picks? Well, then show that you are intent on actually being competitive. And that's not anti-owner. That's pro-sport. I don't see how any fan could be against a salary floor. A salary floor forces teams to participate and not sit on the sidelines. And for all the fans who hate tanking, if you want to get rid of tanking, a good way to go about it, at least the first step, would be to punish teams that are not spending money. A cap punishes ambition. A floor punishes apathy. And there's way too many teams who are not spending what they should. The Pirates being a prime example. The Reds, the Rays could spend more. All these teams could spend more. And look, if you want that money, you have to do more than have a $75 million payroll. Over the last 2 years, the Dodgers have paid more than $270 million in luxury tax alone. They spent $169 million last year in revenue sharing. So where is that money going, and how are teams able to just stick that in the pocket? Because when people say, the owners will just demand a cap, they're already doing that right now. So they're using competitive balance as the excuse. But competitive balance doesn't require the Dodgers from spending. It requires teams to simply just stop trying. So what owners might not want to admit, a salary floor would actually make the sport healthier in real time, like right away. All of a sudden, if you had a salary floor, when we got to free agency and everything stalls like it does every single year, that wouldn't happen. And I think the fans resent the Dodgers for spending, but they really should be resenting their own team for not even trying. And a floor at least would change the perception overnight without triggering an all-out labor war, without a completely lost 2027. And it would also not attack the one thing that players have said. They're not going to give up. They are not accepting a salary cap. Baseball does not have a spending problem as much as it has an effort problem. And a lot of these teams could fix it overnight if baseball just simply wanted to go about fixing the actual issue. But it doesn't seem like they do. They just want a cap so they can control costs. And look, the baseball is not the NFL. You know, Patrick Mahomes can play in Kansas City because it's a truly national league and they share money. Baseball doesn't work that way. You know, stability and off-field money does matter. I get it. And LA is not just another city. It's another ecosystem. So when people say about if the Dodgers want a player, they'll always get him. That's only a recent thing. You know, the Dodgers have been good for a very long time. They've spent money for a very long time, but it's the result of winning. And that's the way these things operate. So when the Dodgers win back-to-back World Series and they're going to go out and use that money, that's what absolutely they should do. They've won the last 2 World Series, and it does feel like in an emotional sense, wow, they're going to win 3 in a row. Well, actually, let's look at the facts for a second. You know, last season, the Dodgers had the highest payroll in baseball. Right behind them were the New York Mets. New York Mets were not that far off from what the Dodgers were spending, and the Dodgers did win a World Series. The Mets didn't even make the playoffs. So spending alone, you have to be smart about it. And look at how close the Dodgers actually came to being knocked out the last 2 years. A lot of this is the result of their success. But in 2024, the Padres had them flat out. Padres were up 3-2 in that series. They were at home. They had the home field advantage, and the Dodgers were throwing a bullpen game, I think in Game 6. Everything was set up for the Padres to shut the door on the Dodgers and prevent the dynasty from even getting going. And they didn't prevent they got shut out, I think, in both those games, and the Dodgers advanced and they won the World Series. Last year, I mean, have we forgotten already? The Blue Jays spent, I think it was $80 or $90 million less than the Dodgers did, and they had a 3-2 World Series lead and were 2 outs away from winning Game 7. They should have won the World Series, but just like San Diego, they weren't able to finish the deal. So when people say, well, the system makes it impossible for anybody to compete with the Dodgers, that's simply not true. We have seen it. It's an emotional thing to say in the moment, but both the Padres and the Blue Jays had their opportunities. They had leads. The Dodgers didn't win because no one else had a chance. They won because in the moment, they were able to capitalize when the moment arrived, and they executed where other teams weren't able to. So that's why the Dodgers have become the easy villain, right? They've become the new evil empire that the Yankees used to be because they go out and spend their money and they're successful. And isn't that what successful teams are supposed to do? Are they supposed to sit on the sidelines and let everybody else catch up? Baseball has always kind of thrived on a David versus Goliath type thing. And all sports do. As much as we hate dynasties, we respond to dynasties, right? We responded to when the Warriors were winning or when the Patriots were winning or when the Yankees were winning. And now that the Dodgers are winning. So yes, are they going out and looking to add more talent and ignore spending more money? You know, like for the last 2 seasons, the Dodgers have led baseball in road attendance as well. That also helps the game, right? For teams that are not selling tickets on their own product, people wait for when the Dodgers come to town, much like when the Yankees did it or when the Red Sox did it back in the day. And that money is real money flowing back into those teams' pockets, and yet it's not ending up on the field. To me, that's a far bigger issue, and one that the owners could fix on their own. So are the Dodgers ruining baseball? To me, the Dodgers are doing exactly what a team is supposed to be doing. Looking for every advantage. Do they have more advantages? Yes. There's always going to be teams that have more advantages than others. They're rich, they're aggressive, but most of all, they're smart. And there's a very good chance they realize this might be the final season that they get to flex their financial muscles in the way they do, and they're going out with a bang, man. I wouldn't even be sure if they're done yet. So if other teams want to compete, they have to start looking around and seeing what advantages they have to be able to compete against the Dodgers. Now, not every team can at that level, but they have advantages as well. And there's plenty of teams that can spend more. Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, White Sox, like big market teams. Because as long as the Dodgers are rich, smart, and aggressive, more so than any other team in the sport, this era is going to belong to them. And it's up to the rest of baseball to knock them down. And while it might feel inevitable as we sit here in January, when we get to October, there will be a moment where the Dodgers will not run through another World Series. They've not run through the last two. But yet everybody wants to complain about the Dodgers. The Dodgers are not the problem. And it's certainly not the players' problem to fix the Dodger problem. That's up to the owners to do that. But whether or not they're willing to do that this offseason when the CBA expires remains to be seen. And past history, it's a pretty good indicator, and chances are they won't. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not done it already, hit that subscribe button. It really does help out the podcast, and we'll be back later this week with a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.